You are listening to the Bold Dreams Held Loosely podcast. My name is Taryn Watts, and in this episode, I am joined by my co-host, Michelle Theriault, where we talk all about boundaries, but not just any boundaries, the boundaries that fuel you, that give you life, that create spaciousness so that you and your life force can thrive. We're calling this episode Life-Giving Boundaries. We hope you enjoy.
Boundaries.
This is our final episode of season 1. And we both agreed that what we really wanted to talk about was boundaries. And not just any boundaries, but life-giving, life-fueling, energizing boundaries.
Exciting
boundaries. And I feel like we have a very similar history with boundaries.
Yeah, I think you're probably even better though than me.
Yeah, really?
Oh, maybe we're
because
just
you're
different.
way better now.
Yeah, I'm getting good.
So we both came from boundaryless pasts, which led to super codependent behavior, really unhealthy relationships. There was just like, I didn't know where I ended and other people began. It was like, I was just, and I like what that meant for me was I had no idea who I was.
Yeah.
Like I was so lost in other people's stuff.
Yeah.
And then I think there's this thing that happens with boundaries. I think first we start working on boundaries externally. And for me, even that's still like an ongoing, I think as we change, like our boundaries externally change. And then there's like even deeper layers of boundaries, which are the internal ones.
Yeah.
So I'd love for us to dive into external boundaries first.
Okay.
And then let's like peel back layers and get to the like really nuanced internal boundaries.
Okay.
Okay, but first and foremost, we came from similar boundaryless pasts. But today, your boundaries are probably the most firm, beautiful, loving, unmoving boundaries than anyone I know. That's not true. Anyone I'm close to.
Yeah. Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it's very inspiring.
They're like feeling better and more powerful and also like gentle and powerful at the same time. They just feel so good, which I felt myself as you were kind of like preambling there.
Yeah.
I felt myself getting excited. And I was like, oh, I'm really excited to talk about boundaries. And it just made me have this memory of when I used to hear the word boundaries, I used to get really scared. And I used to be scared that boundaries would feel really bad to me and like they were going to cut me off from the things I wanted. And I thought boundaries, other people's boundaries, my own boundaries, I thought were going to like cut me off from nourishment or happiness or I don't even know what, but there was so much fear. And now I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. Boundaries are so good and I want more of them.
And I also feel like they, like the stronger they are, the more love, support, nourishment, safety, security, like all the things that you were afraid of cutting yourself off from, the more boundaries I have, the more of that I get.
That certainly feels true for me.
Okay, so for you, if we look at external boundaries, we start this discussion around these external boundaries in our life. So I love to, when I think about anything external, I love to think of the wheel of life with all the different outlets. So you've got, vocation, you've got relationships, you've got, all these things outside of you that kind of encircle you. What were the, like, where was your growing edge work?
Relationship.
Yeah.
There was this like relationship was this glaring spot romantic relationships and then other close relationships. It was just this glaring, boundaryless void that was leaking all of my life energy into. That's what you're going to ask, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so what did the work look like? What did that look like for you?
Oh, God. It looked like... So for me, so there was I had such a sense of scarcity and lack around love, support, such a sense of lack around love and support. And so in those outlets where here's some love, the idea that it just felt like putting boundaries up made it harder for this little trickle of love that was coming in. It felt like, so it was really this scarcity, lack of worthiness, all of that stuff. I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. Do I really deserve this love? Do I really deserve it to feel this good? Do I deserve all of these things? And so I think the process of creating healthy boundaries, because at a certain point I'm like, oh God, I'm becoming too self-aware to deny the fact that, well, I'm really allowing things that feel really bad. I really need to say no to these things. But it also came with so much fear of but if I say no to this relationship or this little trickle of love or this, this connection, what if I close this door and nothing else comes in?
Yeah.
So it's I had to sit in a lot of fear and a lot of grief and a lot of emotional processing and crying and trusting and visioning and connecting to what I do want and believing I deserve good love,
Yeah, and almost sitting in the that there's a waiting period.
There was.
Yeah. An uncertainty or an unknown. Whereas there's an immediate gratification that comes in, just compromising the boundary and letting the trickle of love come in. There's immediate gratification that fuels you.
Yeah.
Despite the knowing that this is wrong or I shouldn't be, this is a boundary that's been crossed.
Totally.
So it's that there's this time lag that happens where you have to sit in the unknown and the messiness and the muck of what it feels like to perhaps cut yourself off from that.
Yeah. And it was very messy and swirly and painful and full of so much self-doubt. So much. But then the boundaries, the boundaries cut off toxic stuff to make more room for more love. And I think it's the same for everything. It allows the flood of everything you do want to come in because you're blocking off what you don't want.
One thing I noticed when I was struggling with boundaries in a toxic, yucky way was I was almost a magnet for people or circumstances or situations, people that would just, it's almost like they sensed the holes in my boundary. And it was whew.
Yeah.
And you're right. There was when I was starting to really patch up those holes, there was this washing away of all of the toxic people and the toxic situations in my life. And that made room for the good, the good stuff.
Yeah. Where for you in your wheel of life do you most gravitate to where the most boundary work is? I
think it's been seasons. There was a point where it was relationships. That was probably my first one, when I first started doing work on myself and realizing that there was I had no boundaries. It was in relationships. And then that got really powerful and strong and healthy. And now relationships are just autopilot, a good autopilot, And then I became a mom, and I lost kind of was trying to figure out who I was in motherhood and what my boundaries look like in parenting and family, and then that got really powerful and really strong, and that feels like a new normal.
Yeah.
And now though, in the last, I would say 5 years or so, my boundary work has been in vocation. That's been the biggest area. And I think actually out of all the areas I've worked on, this has been the most challenging. Vocation has been the most challenging for me.
Why do you think that?
I think that as an entrepreneur, you know how you were talking about being afraid of like being cut off from love, like having a scarcity feeling of love. My fear, it was different. It's like I can like it's similar, but a little like has a different flavor to it, and that is a fear of, as an entrepreneur, it is a fear of scarcity. It's a fear of, for a good long time as an entrepreneur, I was the sole provider of our family. And if I felt like if I did not say yes or deliver exceptional experiences to every human or every person who came into contact with me, that could threaten my security. It could threaten my family's security. So it has felt like tied deeply to mine and my family's safety.
Yeah.
So when I put up boundaries in business, the stretchiness of that, like the discomfort, like sitting in that discomfort, has been really hard. Harder than relationships, harder than parenting.
Yeah.
Like those two areas of my life now, I'm a very boundaried mom.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have no problem. There's nothing. Like, I'm like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
You're good. We're good. Right.
Yeah.
But business is different. And I often like hear myself telling myself the story that I was a coach, right? Like I know I'm an exceptional coach. And I often hear myself telling the story, but I'm not good in business. I'm not meant to be an entrepreneur because I'm really risk adverse. But I don't think that's true. I think that's a story I tell myself, and I don't think that's true. But I'm not your typical entrepreneur. I'm not your typical, risk on entrepreneur. I'm incredibly risk adverse. And so it's just this dichotomy. I think that entrepreneurship brings this certain level of risk and unknown that is very uncomfortable for me and wildly exciting all at the same time.
It's like for me, the scarcity was love, and I was afraid of cutting off love.
Yeah.
And for you in business, it's like cutting off the flow of prosperity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even beyond prosperity, it's like survival.
Right.
It goes so deep.
Yeah.
And my kids and it feels so deep. What's been interesting about my journey with boundaries in business is that when I see other entrepreneurs and other business, coaches or entrepreneurs or whomever with really strong, powerful boundaries, I am repelled and angry and annoyed. That's my initial reaction. And I've been like that since day one. And I can have all sorts of stories in my head about, oh gosh, like I can't believe that person like doesn't reply to their own emails, or I can't believe that person, took 2 weeks to respond to that, or I can't believe that person, it's whatever their boundaries are. I am like annoyed by them. And I didn't realize until many years into business when I started to feel like I had built this passion-based business. I had done it. I did the thing I've always wanted to do. And yet, why am I feeling burnt out? Why am I
Mm-hmm.
feeling exhausted? Why am I feeling like I got all these pinprick holes in my
Yeah.
boundaries? And I think that's been the difference. It used to be I didn't have, there was just nothing there. There was no boundaries there
Yeah.
in my life. And I did such a good job at patching all that up. And now all of a sudden they're like pinprick holes.
Mm.
And like all of a sudden like there's like hundreds of little pinprick holes where energy is just seeping out of. And and I I didn't realize until I was starting to feel burnt out by through business that that thing that I am so repelled by, that's actually what I need.
Mm.
I need that.
Mm. Why do you think's under the being repelled by it? Or what was under?
Yeah. When I think about coming across someone with really strong back, now when I see it, I'm like, oh my God, I want that. I like take notes on their messaging. I'm like, that sounds so good.
Mm-hmm.
But before it was like, it felt mean. It felt inaccessible.
Mm-hmm.
It felt higher than, mightier than, like it felt, there was, to me, it felt like there was this like ego associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't feel kind. It didn't feel like I could know that person. It didn't feel nice.
Mm.
Oh, yuck. Isn't that yucky?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it sounds very human, and I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, also yucky.
Yeah.
Mm. Can you get like can you give an example of when you say like boundaries in business and all these little things? Like what boundaries? And maybe not the ones from before, but like
Mm-hmm.
what are the type of boundaries in business that maybe at one point you thought were like, "Ugh, that's not nice," and now you're like, oh.
That is very nice. Yeah. Well, it started when when I was coaching. So it started when I was coaching, where my first handful of clients, I would say, we would have our weekly scheduled sessions, and I would say things like, if you need me in between, you have my number. Like, call me or text me or email me. And that created just like, that's okay for one or two clients, but then you have a full coaching roster of clients and you can't do that. That's not, first of all, it's not healthy, right? And so communication was a big one, being accessible outside of office hours, outside. And as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you no longer have a 9 to 5, right? You have to now create that boundary for yourself, which is challenging. I had rock solid work boundaries when I was an employee.
Right.
Like, I'm talking rock solid. That I would never compromise those boundaries, because compromising those boundaries meant my kids suffered.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even an option in my mind. But they got really convoluted when I became a business owner, because if I don't answer to, if I'm not available for, then that can impact my kids in different ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think that's the heart of it. So communication, things around, I think for me, I was telling you this a little bit as we were preparing for this session, but I have this running list in my brain, just the way my brain works, and I almost have to like protect myself from myself, of people's expectations, whether they're real or perceived, constantly filtered through my head. So when I say I'm going to do something, even if it's the tiniest thing, like I'll get back to you next week about that thing, or I don't forget. like I have an elephant's memory or brain when it comes to people when I say I'm going to do something. And so that stuff really starts to add up. And so right now, I would say my biggest growing edge is being, I'm not sure what exactly it is, but it's around people's expectations, whether real or perceived. And what that looks like when it comes to boundaries.
What do you want?
That's a good question. So I love what I do. I love the work I do. I love the work we do in the world.
Yeah.
But I know that my energy is finite. It's not limitless. And I know that I need to be able to I have to protect my energy. I have to protect my space. So we just got back from a trip. We just got back from Hawaii, as you know.
Yeah.
And we went to this restaurant. It's called Mama's Fish House. If you're ever in Hawaii, you have to go to Mama's Fish House. It's phenomenal. It's like it's the top rated restaurant on the island. And so first of all, their boundaries are outstanding. But I was annoyed by them. So I had to book this reservation 6 months in advance.
Wow.
Okay. This is how spectacular this restaurant is. And we were a big group of people going. So I was trying to book a table for 22 people. And so when I called 6 months in advance, they said, we only do tables of 8. And every table, so not only do they only do tables of 8, but even as a group, we will absolutely not put you together. Like you cannot be like one table here, one table here, one table. You actually will be spread out across the restaurant. And we only have 2 seatings. One's at 3 p.m., one's at 8 p.m. And you have your window. It was like a nice 2.5-hour window that you could sit there. And every table, one credit card pays the entire bill. Like they listed out their boundaries. And it was really inconvenient. It was really inconvenient. And I was like, well, we're celebrating an anniversary. Can you make any like special arrangements for us? Or could we just be closer together? And they were, no. And I think I asked probably 5 times to see if I would get a different response. Yeah. No. And I was annoyed. We got to that restaurant and yes, we were all split up. And every table was tables of 8. And the experience was spectacular. The experience was spectacular. Why? Because we weren't seated next to each other. Had they been seated us next to each other, it would have impacted the ambience of the entire space. So other tables would have been impacted. Their service, like the service they gave, was just on another level. Like everything about the experience from the time we got in to the time we left was spectacular because they had such firm boundaries. And they were unwavering in those boundaries.
Oh, I like that phrase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, I'm about to say that's how I want to be, but I'm shaking as I say that. I want to, part of our mandate is like in business is I want to deliver exceptional experience. I think every entrepreneur, every coach, everyone wants to deliver an exceptional experience. And I often waver in my boundaries because that's part of delivering, or I get that convoluted, like I get that confused with delivering an exceptional experience. And so what I want, and I'm getting clear as you ask me that question, is I want to get so clear on what are my Mama's Fish House boundaries.
Yeah.
Like, what do I need to deliver exceptional experiences like that? And then how do I become unwavering in that?
I love that.
Yeah.
Like, who knew a restaurant had boundaries?
Uh-huh.
It makes me think, where else can we put boundaries?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think this is such a good question for coaches to ask themselves, or people in the helping, healing, service industry, because energy is finite.
Mm-hmm.
I think our energy can be maximized, it can be enhanced, it can be, but it's finite. At the end of the day, we're human beings with finite amounts of energy to spend in a day. And these questions around like what we do and how we serve and how we give, our boundaries help us do that in more powerful ways.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not mean.
No,
It's life-giving.
it is.
And the other thing I have to prepare myself for are people like me a couple of years ago on the receiving end of that who do think it's mean. And I have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And I have to let them own that that's theirs.
Yeah.
And not mine.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. What would it actually for real feel like to you right now to set a boundary and to someone to say like, that's mean. That's not, you're not being very nice to me.
It would feel like, honestly, it would feel like an act of self-love.
Mm.
And I think maybe, I'm going to speak for myself, but maybe this is true for everyone who's been bending their boundaries a little too much and they're feeling the effects of that, is that when you actually say it and create it and do it, yes, there's that like uncomfortableness, but it also feels wildly empowering.
Mm. Yeah.
It feels like you're reclaiming. For me, it feels like I am saying yes to me and no to you. And that's not mean. That's like an act of self-love.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, one thing that not always, but seems to often be true. You know, you're talking about real and also perceived expectations. And I think I actually told you the story a few weeks ago where I had a season of feeling tired by cooking for my family. But I love cooking, and good meals actually are a priority. Like health and taste, it actually is a priority, but I was just feeling like, oh. Anyway, I realized what I most wanted was to tap into what am I craving, and then I'll cook that if I'm craving it and I feel the energy to cook it. And I want to release all responsibility and obligation to cook any meals because kids like them, someone else likes them, we need a meal tonight. Like I released that responsibility. And I was gearing up to do this. And I was expecting to get resistance. I was expecting to get resistance from kids, from my partner. I was like imagining these little conversations of like this resistance. And then like I was imagining what my rebuttal would be.
Yeah.
You know, like
I do know.
Oh, I'm getting ready. This is gonna be a boundary. I'm just gonna cook what I feel like cooking, and then that's it. And the reality is like I geared up. I started just being like, what do I want? Felt so selfish. Thought I was gonna ruffle everyone. What do I feel like? Okay, I'm doing that. I'm making this meal. And everyone has been so happy with me. There's no resistance.
Yeah.
My partner's like, great meals lately. This is great. The kids, it's just working out. The kids are eating it. And also, if they don't like it, no big deal. Like, no one's. And I was like, wow, I really imagined all of this resistance that isn't actually there.
Totally.
And I think partly sometimes it's just because we get cuckoo and we're like, imagining things. And also, I think it's true that when you burn away all of the self-doubt, the universe doesn't mirror self-doubt as much, right? Like when you feel so, I know that I got to the point where I was like, that's it. No matter what the response I get, this is what I'm doing. I'm committed. Nothing can make me waver. And then nothing tested that.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, oh, and sometimes we do get tested, but I find I get tested with resistance when I'm still like wavering and not 100% sure.
I love that.
Yeah.
A quote just popped into my mind, and I don't know who coined this quote, but it's to the effect of, we show others how to treat us. Is that right? Did
I don't know if that's the quote, but like,
yeah.
Yes.
We show others how to treat us. And I think that's what loving boundaries do. And I think you're absolutely right. I've probably played out every scenario in my head over and over and over and over and over again about the new boundaries I want to create for myself and my business and life, and you know, maybe even have like an generated out of office that says like, I'll get back to you in 7 days or something, you know, something like these firm boundaries that I've been playing with, and I've imagined every scenario. And they're probably all imagined.
Right.
Because you're absolutely right. I think that we show others how to treat us. And that might mean people are repelled by my boundaries and might just like, but it also might mean it's exactly what they needed.
Oh, yeah.
And it might inspire others to create their own life-giving boundaries and give other people more permission. That's what you do for me. I mean, you exercising and living in your boundaries and showing and just like embodying your boundaries and living. It's wildly empowering to watch you do that.
It feels like because this is new for me over the past few years of being like, oh, wait, boundaries.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've been exploring deeper and deeper levels of what truly feels like life giving and energy honoring. I just lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
What was I saying?
So we were talking about you're getting into deeper layers of your boundaries.
Yeah.
And I was just reflecting to you that you...
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right. There's this word like power, and just like powerful, that's been I've been yearning to feel powerful. And there is a direct connection with boundaries. Identifying and standing in my own boundaries feels like the most powerful thing I've ever leaned into. It feels like identifying my boundaries and standing in them. It's almost exhilarating how powerful I feel. Like, wait a minute. I actually decide what I'm a stand for. I actually decide what I allow and don't allow. I have the power. I'm not like this person wavering in the wind at the mercy of the world. It's like not true. It feels so empowering. So empowering.
You just said you're getting into deeper and deeper layers. So what are you've done such good work in the external layers of your life, the external things of your life. And now you're getting into like deeper and deeper internal layers.
Yeah.
So what's the work you're doing now? What does that look like?
So I feel like I've gone almost as extreme in the external boundaries as possible.
Yeah, you have.
Like, you know, like,
can you actually
say some of my new boundaries?
Tell some of your external new boundaries.
Yeah. So I don't go outside at nighttime after the sun has set. I'm home by sunset.
Yeah.
Just don't go out at night.
Yeah.
And it's
so you said that to me once. I think I was inviting you to an event and you said, "No, I don't go out after dark." And that was it. And I was like, "Oh my God. That was amazing. I want that. I don't want to go out after dark."
Me either.
I want to be in bed by 9:00 every night.
Feels so good.
And so you saying that to me as a no, And it was like there was no excuse. It was just like, no, I don't go out after dark.
Yeah.
I was like, that you just gave me permission to say the same and to do the same because it felt true.
Yeah. It feels so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love that also. I used to always, you mentioned excuses.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've always felt kind of this way. Like, I don't like, but it didn't feel like I had a valid reason. And oh my gosh, the amount of hours I've spent conjuring up random excuses for things that I didn't, like I had to justify or make excuses for. Anyway, I've spent a lot of time. It didn't occur to me that it took a very long time for it to occur to me that, like, I have the power to choose to stay home, and that can just be my boundary, as long as it feels good for that to be my boundary. Maybe one day it'll actually, for real, it'll change. But, yeah, don't go out after dark. Also, I set a boundary for myself for this winter, where anything that wasn't already scheduled, like, today we're all here. This is this is in our schedule. We're recording this. There's classes that are in the schedule that I show up for. But I'm not making any other plans for the entire winter. None. Not work-wise, not personal-wise. None. I won't go places. I won't. We can't make plans. And don't get me wrong. Like, I have people I love. It's not because I'm like cutting out bad people.
No,
it's
no.
like
It's like I completely understand. It's not bad stuff that's coming in or
No.
wanting your attention.
No.
Yeah.
There's wonderful things that are so easy to say yes to, but I'm giving myself a whole winter of, sorry, there are no plans this entire winter. Let's touch base again in the spring. We'll see. So, like, things like that feel so good. And they feel like a little part of me feels like not extreme. They actually don't feel extreme. I was going to say, like, they sound a little extreme, but, like, the reality is they feel so gentle and so nice and so life-giving.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I think this piece is important. Late in the fall, so like we're dead into winter right now, but late in the fall, I kept hearing you say you were so tired. And it was the kind of tired that sleep wasn't doing justice for. It wasn't, sleep couldn't fix this kind of tired. Like, your soul was craving the deepest of rests.
Yeah.
Like you were yearning, like it was that soul yearning for it. And this was your response to that yearning.
Yes.
Like, this wasn't this making no plans or not going out after dark. This wasn't just like something you just grabbed out of the sky. It was something that you were deeply yearning for.
True.
And you paid attention to those yearnings. You paid attention to, you just wanted this time of quiet and recharge and rest and deep winter rest. And your body was craving that.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And so my body was, my body, my mind, my soul, every part of me was craving rest. And it was loud enough that I was like, okay, priority one, number one. There are a few essential things that keep the wheels of my life turning, that have to still exist, and everything else, everything else gone. And what is so cool, and I told you this earlier today, as soon as I was able to sink into that, just before Christmas, I've been in this like deep rest since just before Christmas. I've always had really wonky, all over the place hormones, irregular cycles, and I've like tried so many things to regulate my hormones. Anyway, the second I committed to this deeper level of rest, almost instantly my body went, oh, okay, let's give you regular cycles. And since then, so for the past 2 months, the second I committed to like deep rest, releasing everything that isn't absolutely essential, it's like my body just like gently moved into, regular, healthy monthly cycle and my hormones feel balanced. And it made me realize that there's been a big difference in the rest and the things that my brain thought I needed and the reality of actually listening to myself and actually listening to my body and then giving it that.
Mm.
And these, and I think that's why I can be unwavering in the boundaries. Because you're right, it's not like some random thing like I decide
Yeah.
I never wear pink or I always
Yeah.
do this, right? It's like, okay, let's I'm going to listen to my body and myself, and I'm actually going to honor it.
Mm.
Even if people are like, you don't leave your house at night? You don't make plans this winter? You know, it's like, that's why it's worth it.
Yeah.
Because it's like to take care of myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I hear you do is like there are no excuses for it. There are like nothing's getting in the way. Like you found a way to do it.
I'm doing it.
You're doing it.
I'm doing it. You know what else too? I'm doing it even more. I'm finding new ways to do it even more than I thought. And now I thought, well, yeah, I can rest more here, I can rest more here, I can rest more here. But the more I sink into it and the more devoted I become, the more it's like the amount of rest and leisure time, it's like expanding. I'm finding new pockets and new ways to rest even more deeply. So I have a lot, I have to drive, when I drive my kids into school, it's quite a long drive. It didn't feel worth coming home. I was like, oh, so much gas. Oh, I'll just do groceries, be productive. And since I'm in the practice of listening to myself one day, my insides just said, go home and get back into bed. And my brain was like, doesn't make sense in terms of gas and this and that. But I was like, no, let's just experiment with like continuing to listen because this is working. So I came home, got back into bed, and I realized, wait, who's stopping me from doing this? Some random story in my brain. So now there's a couple extra days a week where I drop my kids to school, I come home, get back into bed. Sometimes then I get back up and putt around and do things, but I just get to float around in this world of like rest and slowness. And it feels so good. And the more I do it, the more, I don't know, it's like the possibilities for it expand and the better it feels and the more real it feels. Before, it almost didn't even feel possible. Like I was one of those people who were like, yeah, I want to rest, but I can't rest anymore because, and I had a whole list of excuses why I couldn't. And the more I lean in, the more the excuses evaporate. Yeah.
It comes back to those perceived expectations.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's another line of thought that I want to follow, which is another thing I heard you say, which is you also give yourself permission to change your mind whenever you want to change your mind.
Yeah, I do. Like the time I thought there was something you invited me to, or we were invited to, we were going to do.
Yeah.
And I thought, maybe that sounds good.
Yeah.
And then some time went by and I was like, whoa, no, that doesn't sound good. I changed my mind. I'm not coming.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
You know what? Okay. So you asked me what would it look like to have, something that's becoming clear is these, I have these expectations or these real or perceived expectations from people or from myself that I conjure up or that I'm constantly sifting through. I think language, like clear, direct language, is so important when talking about boundaries. And just as an example, when we make a commitment to something that's months away and it sounds fun in our minds just in the moment, but as we get closer to the event, I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm exhausted, or I would much prefer to be home before dark, or I'd prefer to
Mm-hmm.
be home with my family. But I've made that commitment and that person's expecting something of me. I would love to get I would love to get better at being more direct in my communication around commitments and
Mm.
around things, to say how empowering it would be to say, I'm going to say yes now, but I might change my mind,
Mm.
or I can't say yes to that right now. It's too far out. I'll let you know a couple days in advance before the event, or
Yeah.
just something that doesn't leave a window of expectation open. I want to be in charge of my own windows,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
you know?
Oh, yeah. You're reminding me of the phrase I've been repeating to myself the past couple weeks. And it started in relation to money, because, we're doing all this money
Yeah.
work, all this
We need
prosperity
a
work.
whole episode on the money
Yes.
work in season 2. That's
Yes.
coming.
That'll be a different episode. But so I've been thinking about the idea of being debt free. And so
Mm-hmm.
I started saying to myself, and also feeling into, I am free of all debts and burdens. And I'm like, I like the feeling of this. But then I started realizing, oh, this is so important to me, not just in relation to money or loans. I am free of all debts and burdens. I don't owe anyone anything.
Mm-hmm.
Obligations feels so good and so important. I realized, so like an internal boundary, it never, ever feels good for me to do something because I feel obligated.
Mm-hmm.
That feels horrible. And what feels like, even though it can be uncomfortable to say no to someone or like let someone down, um, internally, it feels better to clean that up and stay in integrity and only do what I want to do instead of doing something out of debt or obligation because at
Mm-hmm.
one point I committed to something.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to live free of all debts, burdens, obligations. And hopefully I have enough foresight to say no in advance.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm not going to be perfect. So when I do stumble across a new area where I've like overcommitted or whatever, I need to clean that up, and then I
Mm.
need to clean it up and inform, and then I'm back in integrity.
Hell yes.
Yeah.
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 Can you tell me a little bit more about cleaning it up and inform?
Mm. There's the book The Four Agreements?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes.
I can't even remember what agreement it
Yeah.
is. Maybe it's be impeccable with your word.
Yeah.
And I remember there's a distinction there with it's be impeccable with your word, right? So it's like do what you say you're going to do, but it doesn't mean do something when you know better. Like if you say something and then you learn better, like if you commit to something
Mm.
or promise something and you learn and grow and evolve and then you know better and that's no longer in alignment for you, that's okay. You're not going against your word. You know better now. And cleaning it up means, for me, just communicating that.
Yeah.
I thought this, I know better now.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, not usually, and I think what's true for me is even if someone's going to be disappointed, usually, well, even if someone's going to be disappointed, I need to come first. Like
Yeah.
my own just like basic integrity of what feels right needs to come first. And I just need to learn from that. I think it'd be pretty shitty to keep doing the same thing over and over and over. Committing, canceling, cleaning it up. Cleaning it up means you cancel, but then you learn from it, right? And then I
Mm-hmm.
don't commit to the
Mm-hmm.
same thing again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what it means
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. It's almost like there's a difference. Like cleaning it up, it's not making an excuse. It's
No.
not it's not like putting a band-aid on the little what you're describing is the definition of my little pinpricked boundaries.
Mm.
Um, and making an excuse or making it go away for the moment is like putting a little band-aid over it that's going to fall
Yeah.
off, you know?
Yeah.
I think cleaning it up is, I really love this energy of, yes, communicate that that something has changed, or a new perspective has emerged, or you feel differently about this thing. Learn from that and stay in integrity in that, and stay
Yeah.
and move forward inside that energy.
Yeah. That's where my no plans for the winter came from.
Hmm.
Because this thing that I referenced that I forget what it was. Oh, I remember it was a brunch.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
yes, okay, I'll come when we'll go drive together. And I realized I really don't want to do that. So let you know.
Yeah.
Okay. But then it's like, I really don't want to do that. And I think I need, and this is probably going to happen again. I don't actually foresee myself wanting to do this anytime soon. I need to not make any plans all winter so I don't do this again. Right? Like I need
It's
to
like a boundary you created for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
because I need to not repeat that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And honor your body's desire for the deepest of rest.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You asked me something earlier we're going to talk about, which is, we're kind of talking about internal boundaries.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like there's also a different kind of internal boundary or internal boundaries that are important. Like, I don't know if you've ever, there's a book called The Courage to Be Happy. Have you ever heard of it?
Who's the author?
Forget. I feel like it's like two authors, and I feel like they may be like Japanese names.
Is it not the same
Author is Courage to Be Disliked?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the one I read. I've not read Courage to Be Happy.
Okay.
Okay.
Really, really, really good book. I feel like in a lot of ways, The Courage to Be Disliked and The Courage to Be Happy, I feel like they're almost entirely like internal boundaries. So I was thinking about how I go through my day and sometimes I have these like beautiful moments and then worry creeps in and fear creeps in. But it's not a productive worry or a productive fear. I've already gone through the mental exercise of creating a boundary, creating a perspective, or this is what I'm going to do, or this is my stance. But then so much worry creeps in, and it almost feels like my default, my habit is to just like allow this dance to go on. And I started really playing with these boundaries of not allowing myself to do that. Like creating boundaries around worry, creating boundaries around, like my old fears, my old worries. It can have some room to breathe for sure and explore. But if there's nothing else productive to do with it right now, leaning into like, maybe it's really safe to just be happy right now. What if it's okay to be happy? What if it's okay to be unreasonably happy? What if it's okay to anchor into all of my future visions and desires that feel so freaking good and revel in that? And if I create my reality, if I create my experience inside my body, and I'm the only one who does, then like I need to take friggin' ownership to be internally who I want to be, to focus on what I want to focus on. And there's no one and there's nothing who can create a boundary for that outside of myself. It's only
Mm-hmm.
me. I'm the
Mm-hmm.
only one with that power.
It's like personal responsibility on a whole new level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the process of telling yourself that and talking yourself through that, is that what gets you to say, okay, worries, fears, like that's enough now? Is that
Mm.
enough?
Hmm. It's hard to, I don't know how to answer this question because it feels like it feels like such a slow moving evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I used to think, okay, so we've also had this conversation before. Um, if you read Abraham Hicks, or if you read manifestation stuff, or if you read The Big Leap, or there's all these wonderful things like choose and be happy, and then you will
Mm-hmm.
manifest, or focus on these things. And I've always had this sort of objection to it. It's not that simple because you need to feel your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a long season of really needing to feel my feelings and be inside of my fears. And that's like still such a big part that I feel is so important for me to always honor. But I've just been noticing lately, I'm getting to the end of the barrel with my fears. And at a certain point,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing else it's like, yes, I hear you. Held a
Mm-hmm.
lot of space for you. But is there anything else to hold space for? At a certain point, my brain just started choosing like, well, I don't believe you. I don't
Mm.
believe you. So how long do I want to be inside my fear for? I don't believe this. I'm choosing this other story or this other perspective. I really believe it. So it feels like a natural progression to like, I can't let you run wild now. Like, I've held so much space for you,
Mm-hmm.
fear. I've held so much space for you, and I don't really believe you. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to play with, and then so all these people now make sense to me. Like Abraham
Mm.
Hicks. I'm like, oh, yeah.
You can choose.
Yeah. At a
Yeah.
certain point, when you've held enough space for your feels and feels, well, yeah,
Yeah.
your feels, your
Yeah.
fears, I feel like it's a natural tapering off for me right now of like, and now I get to choose.
Yeah. The other thing that's coming up is that um, as we break down those old neural pathways, like those old limiting beliefs, those old ways of being, those old fears that create these like really powerful neural pathways in our brain, as we work with them, as we move through them, as we hold space for them, as we break them down, like new
Mm,
ones are forming.
yeah.
And then that almost becomes our new default. And it's easier to they don't these fears, these limiting beliefs don't have the same hold that they
Mm,
did. They're not as sticky as they
yeah.
once were.
And you know that exact process you just described? It's a very long process
Yeah.
to rewire. And I think that's why it's been such a long process of like learning the art and power of boundaries. I think
Yeah.
it had to come alongside
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right?
Agreed.
Yeah. Um, on the theme of like internal boundaries, for you, what do
Hmm.
you think? Where's your growing edge with internal boundaries right now?
Hmm. Well, I keep coming back to this expectation stuff.
Mm.
And but the real work is actually not other people's expectations of me. Because, and when I say that, these are not bad expectations. These are not like all those toxic things like that's long gone. These are not bad. These are like opportunities here and partnerships
Mm.
here and conversations here and all sorts of things that like are beautiful and wonderful. It's just there's a lot of them, and I only have this much energy to give in a day.
Mm.
um but so the real work though is not in, so there's the outside work for me right now of cleaning that up and perhaps making a big blanket firm statement for myself. I'm not sure what that is yet. It's not making no plans, because that's not quite what it is for me, but I have to come up with what my thing is in this season of really giving whatever it is I need outside of those expectations. So that's the external work, but the real work is really sitting in the discomfort of why of expectations, period. Of why I have been in the habit of allowing other people's expectations of me and what they want from me to come before what I need. That's the real inner work that I need to do, that I am doing right now and examining right now.
Yeah.
And sitting in the discomfort of when I clean that up, you know, what about that person's perception of me or expectation of me? Why is that feeling so uncomfortable to disappoint? Or why was that even there in the first place? And like, that's the true healing work for me right now.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just off the top of your head, I don't know if
Yeah.
it's going to be easy to access exactly, but like, what expectations have you had of yourself, consciously or subconsciously, that you think you're ready to release?
Yeah. And I've been sitting with this question of, we talk a lot about mirrors, and I'm like, okay, do I have a lot of, if I'm experiencing other people's expectations right now, do I carry a lot of expectations on others that are being mirrored back to me? And that's not it. Actually, I have very little I place very little expectations on others. Almost none.
Yeah.
Like, I don't expect things from other people.
Yeah.
I don't. Not in my marriage, not with my kids, not with work, not with students, not with colleagues, none of that. So it's mirroring something different. It's mirroring something else. It's not that, it's mirroring something else. And when I try to put my finger on it, it's a little bit like swirl. When you haven't quite like put your finger on the thing, I'm just kind of swirling around it. I think it is, I think it's around hurting others. I think it's around, it's around not, and maybe it's really around not quite understanding what I think boundaries for me is almost this elusive thing that keeps changing and also keeps changing in different seasons of life. And I think what I need to do is sit with myself more to say, like, in this season, maybe it's even just like this week, what do I need? Like, what's my body craving? And maybe it is like no plans, nothing around me. Or maybe it's, no, actually I'm feeling really social and I want to be out there. I want to converse. I want to brainstorm. I want to do all these things with people. But I don't ask myself that question enough, because I'm more focused on what are all these people wanting. Does that make sense? And specifically in business, in no other area of my life do I behave this way.
Yeah.
Not in friendships,
Right.
not in relationship, not in motherhood. It's just in business.
Let's talk about some of the boundaries that some people in business have that we've been really inspired by.
Yeah, lately, yes.
Like some of these group agreements.
Yeah.
What policies and group agreements that we've heard from other people are most starting to light you up? And
well, one thing I know for sure is that the people I want to work with, people I feel safest with, are people who take 100% personal accountability and responsibility for their lives. When I am in the presence of someone who takes 100% personal responsibility and accountability for their lives, I feel the safest with that person. I feel no expectations. I feel nothing is being placed on me.
Yeah.
Because that person is standing in their own integrity. That person is standing in their own power. That person can say no to me. And I'm like, good. Like, awesome, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing that person doesn't want anything from me.
Yeah.
And that is the energy I want. I am so inspired by. So when I see these other coaches or these leaders who are just like very much standing in that energy themselves and expecting that, I shouldn't even say expecting it, but they're saying, if you want to come work with me, this is the energy you have to stand in.
Yeah.
And I won't accept anything else.
Yeah.
You own your process. You own your feelings. You own the work that you put in. And I'm going to hold this beautiful space for you in this way, in this container. But you own you. And I own me. And that feels so good.
Yeah. And even as you say it,
Yeah.
the energy of it, I'm like, this is so powerful. Yes. So if it feels so powerful, feels really powerful to me, feels powerful to you, obviously to other people. If it feels so powerful to not carry responsibility for other people and to like allow people to stand in their own power and responsibility and like sovereignty. I guess if we like step way back, like why do you think we've gotten our wires so crossed with boundaries?
I don't know. Maybe it's not, this is not like a universal everyone thing. Maybe I think the helping profession, like people who yearn to help and want to make an impact and want to help create change in people's lives, and maybe again I'm making this more general than it is, but I think there's something about that and boundaries and empowering others to stand in their personal sovereignty and their power, and because what that means is you might not be able to help that person, or or that person might be angry at you, or that person might be annoyed by your powerful boundaries and are repelled by you, just like other people in business used to repel me, because that was actually the thing I needed to work on. And can you be okay with that? That's the question. That's that I ask myself. Can I be okay with that? Can I be okay that I'm not loved and adored by all? Like, can I be okay with that? That some people are like, look at her and her boundaries. Like, can I be okay with people being repelled by me? And now the answer is abso-fucking-lutely yes. Yeah. I can. Yeah. Because there was something like kind of circling back at the beginning of the conversation. There was something you said around, oh geez, I'm losing sight of it right now. But it was something around it was around the work of knowing when you're constantly living a deeply examined life, and you're growing and you're evolving and new perspectives and new energy is emerging inside of you, to choose something out of integrity with who you are, because of old patterning or old limiting beliefs or old ways of being, there's a point where it becomes so freaking painful to not choose yourself in that moment. Yeah. And that dissonance inside, or that disconnect, gets louder and louder and louder and louder until you make the empowered choices and stand in integrity with whatever this new boundary is, or whatever this new perspective is, or whatever this new way of being is. And I think that's where I am with this boundary around expectation.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, one thing I just did for myself, I created a new internal operating system, a new order of operations.
Okay.
So I noticed that, okay, so one thing that I really want is this deep rest and a regulated nervous system. You know, like regulated nervous systems are like all the hype in the world, and I've been reading about it, and it's like, okay, oh, I want a regulated nervous system so bad. I want to be so deeply rested. And I noticed that there's like a little order of operations that I was going through to try to get to my rest and my peace and my alignment and my regulated nervous system. And that was like, okay, work tasks, clear those off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, house, feed the kids, make them their meals, whatever. And then I can
Mm-hmm.
sink into
Mm-hmm.
and I've decided as a radical experiment to make it go inverse. So I'm not allowed, first, I have to care for my body first. That includes, like, so I have to care for my body, my emotions, myself. I have to do it first. Then I can go into like the people around me, like my children's bodies and my home. And then I can think about being of service in the world to
Mm.
students or to whatever. And as this experiment goes, so I'm like, okay, with me first. Sometimes I have to push through fear. Feels like what I really need to go is go clean this room, but like my body needs a shower and I need to breathe. Okay, just trust that it's okay. That seems kind of silly, but then through my phone, a student request will come in. It did like 2 days ago. A student request came in, and my old operating system would have gone, just go clear that
Mm-hmm.
first
Mm-hmm.
so that I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, oh, I really want to clear it. I don't know how I'm going to relax. And I was like, no, no.
Yeah.
How can you be okay with all that
Right.
existing and coming
Yeah.
into caring for myself first? And it was very stretchy, and it flared up all sorts of fear, probably even really irrational fear, like flared it all up. And I had to so intentionally lean into um, like the trust we were talking about earlier
Mm-hmm.
and the faith and like living in the gap of,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, this is like new and creating a boundary. What if it like cuts off the flow of like, oh, I don't even know what, just
Mm-hmm.
irrational things. And so I leaned into, I don't know why a shower is always the first thing for me. It sets this like, get in the shower, have a tea. I need to hydrate more, maybe a little snack. I need to go for a walk and move my body in the sunshine. I need to, oh, also now now I tend to my space, and now it's like, oh,
Yeah.
and now I'll go to the student request.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I have a similar process of all my to-dos have to get done and then I'm good, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I really, really love this inverse. I'm going to try that.
Yeah. And what helps me is that like I just officially decided on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've been toying with caring for myself first for a long time, but I didn't put it into stone of like this is the official order of operations. I think I had to do that. It's like this is my internal boundary. This is my new official order of operations. It's been decided,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that helps me keep the boundary because no, it's decided. There's no brain power needed right now. This is
Yeah.
this is decided. And it's like I'm experimenting with it.
I love it.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to just say like, okay, is there
Yeah.
anything else we want to claim about
Yeah.
boundaries right now for ourselves, even selfishly?
This conversation has really inspired me. This is the work I'm going to do after this conversation, is to think about what are my Mama's Fish House boundaries?
Mm.
What are the things I want to claim for myself, both external and internal? In this season, whatever that is.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like the winter or a couple weeks. I have to feel into that. But knowing that this is not forever.
Yeah.
It's just like that. What do I need right now?
Yeah.
What am I deeply yearning for right now?
Yeah.
That's what I'm committing to after this conversation. What about you?
Yeah. You know, for me, I almost feel like, you said it not forever, but for now, what do I need?
Yeah.
I feel like I am sort of building some forever boundaries. Like, I feel like I am. I feel like these are kind of forever. Not that they can't change,
Yeah.
but, this, like, I feel like I'm playing the long game a little bit, but I really do want to build some forever boundaries. Like this order of operations,
Yeah.
me first thing.
Yeah.
I want that to be a forever boundary. And what I'm really curious about right now is to notice the places where it feels like there's a conflict and I can't honor that. And then what do I have to do so that I can resolve that? Like what sort of planning, what sort of structure, what sort of conversation, so I never feel like, oh no, oh, but if I, so, and then, so for example, like, I don't want to, make it sound kind of easy. I made it sound kind of easy earlier of like, if I realize it's not in integrity, then clean it up and be in integrity, even if it disappoints someone. But I also understand that like there's so many times where practically that feels a lot harder. So for example, say there's a class in the MRA and I'm like, I'm tired. What I want to do right now is go to bed. It doesn't necessarily mean, sorry, Taryn, can't show up to this class tonight. I need to rest. But what it does mean is like, oh, I'm tired right now. And like step back and look like, what really would I have to put into place so I might not be tired right now? And so I never am put in this position again of feeling like, ooh, I'd rather rest. I never want this to happen again. Like, what do I really have to do so that doesn't happen? I want to find all those little places. And then so I never have to, because really I'm not going to be like, sorry, can't come to class right now. But I feel so committed to finding all of the places and all of the things so that you clean it up in advance. So I never have to, so I want to clean up in advance all the places that might ever make me feel like I have to put something else before I'm nourished, before I'm rested, before I'm, and I feel like I'm getting pretty good, got really good boundaries, but I feel like there's more little corners because I still feel the temptation to put something else first. And I think as long as I feel the temptation to put something or someone first, there's more
work to do.
Yeah, there's more work to do. So I feel it. I feel it. I feel like I'm in. I think what I'm claiming is that I'm really enjoying this experiment, and I want to stay committed to this experiment. I want to see how far I can go. You know what I really want? This is like true for a lot of areas. One is this. I don't like someone telling me the way something is. I don't like being told this is the way you need to live your life. I don't like being told this is the way you need to do work or motherhood or life or humanness or whatever. I detest it. And my whole life, I've never really liked hearing. It always rubbed me the wrong way when people feel like you just got to hustle a little and do this, or you're just going to push through and do that, or yeah, this is just the way it is. You work hard and do this, and then you can have this. I don't like it. And there's so many people who so firmly believe, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that. I don't believe any of that. And I want very much to prove to myself that I can actually live the way I want to live. I can actually put myself first for real, for real, for real. I want to prove it to myself. I feel like that's what the experiment's about. Not necessarily proving it to somebody else, but
I love that.
But if I prove it to myself, then I never have to battle with anyone else who believes that. I don't need to engage in a like, no, you can see it another way. I just want to prove it to myself that there's another way. That's not, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see, you know, how you were saying how far you can go with these boundaries. I'm excited to see where these boundaries take me. Like what will life look like once I've implemented all these beautiful boundaries and the spaciousness that creates and the energy and the life-givingness of all of this. I'm excited for that.
As you were saying that, I just got such a gentle, soft feeling in my body. One thing I notice, one thing I really, really believe, the more firm, loving boundaries I put in place, the softer I feel, the softer my belly feels, the softer my heart feels. And my inkling is that, I don't know if this is true for you, but this is true for me, but my inkling is that the further we take, or the further I take these boundaries, the softer I get to be. And I really want to be soft.
Yeah.
I really want to be soft and relaxed
And just like melt into life.
Like flowy.
One last time before we end this episode, can you repeat the affirmation you've been telling yourself? Because that's something else I want to really log into my brain. Can you repeat that affirmation?
I am free of all debts and burdens.
Yeah, and I'm going to add, I am free from all debts, all burdens, all obligations, and all expectations. That's my new affirmation.
Yeah. If all of those are gone, then we really can care for ourselves.
And to me, when all those are gone, we are free. Yeah.
That's just it right there.
Thank you so much for listening. For more information, you can visit our website at www.themindrebel.com or visit us on Instagram or Facebook at the_mind_rebel_academy. And these links can all be found in the show notes below. If you like this episode, we would be so grateful if you shared it with your fellow bold dreamers.